Alright, so I wanted to make this video about various topics I saw today. The first one is a thread from Brad Glasgow. It's on Thread Reader. He made 10 tweets about it. There's a new disturbance in gaming as Eddie Sarkeesian herself was resurrected and turned into a formerly successful actor. Her name, Geena Davis. There's Geena right there. She created the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media. And he said that basically just set out there doing Eddie Sarkeesian type research, counting the number of women that there are in media. He said then they turned to video games and put out an analysis of masculinity in video games and the gaming community. As you might imagine, I have issues. So do I. He says I'm not going to do a deep dive. I won't cover the whole tweet he did, or tweet thread I mean. But basically, they were counting how many streamers are men, how many streamers play male protagonist games, blah blah, as he says. He says one of the things they did was use a bot to comb through language on Twitch and report on language it considers problematic. For example, 20% of the time, streamers use that horrible ableist slur, crazy. Now the thing about that, like I said, I won't go through this whole thing, but just to focus on this real quick, the exact number was 18.3% of the time. I have heard, because I have younger relatives, and sometimes I've overheard them listening to or watching some of their favorite YouTube people. And I'm talking like some of the most, kiddie, like, you know what I'm talking about, like a lot of these people who make YouTube videos for like the kids and stuff. They act all crazy and everything, and they say the word crazy a lot. So it's like that's not really like crazy to me isn't a bad thing. I mean, I get where they're coming from with this crap, but it's just that it's crap. You know, the ableist language crazy. And it goes on, and it's talking about, the ubiquity of white male violence in video games must be called out in light of mass shootings, which is just ridiculous because there's more, there's more violence that, because like gun violence and stuff is obviously a very serious issue, and it all needs to be called out. You can't just sit here and say, well, white male violence needs to be called out. Well, no, white female violence needs to be called out. Black male violence needs to be called out. Black female violence. I mean, on and on and on. All that stuff needs to get called out. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's the usual crap. Here are some of the conclusions that they came to. You need to increase the number of playable female characters in games, playable characters of color, LGBTQ character, or LGBTQIA plus. I don't even know what all that stuff is, but characters age 50 plus in games, observable disabilities, large body types, a wide range of emotions, avoid the objectification of characters, including having them wear revealing clothing and stuff. It's a mess. I'll just move on. The next one is it's from a place called Gaming, and it's video games are still falling behind with asexual representation. This article actually was from March 31st of this year. I had no idea. I just found out about this. But basically talking about how Louise Chase wants more characters who are asexual in video games. And to me, it's like how many sexualities do you even know about with characters in games and stuff? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. Because most of the time people play the video games because they want to play the game. They don't give a crap about, is this person, having sex with men or women or both or this, or none, or who cares? Nobody gives a crap. It's ridiculous, and it's just, it's the kind of stuff you would expect to find on a site called gaming.com, GAY, and they go on, they talk for a bit, and it's just not worth. Quite frankly, it's not worth spending the time on it, so I'm not going to. It's difficult to play Cassandra over Alexios as asexual in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's like, come on, and don't we have better things to worry about? But anyway, third story is about Sony and PS5's performance in Japan is becoming a grave concern. This is from Gaming Bolt. The reason this entire story is coming about is because the newest sales report from Japan, painted very stark. Basically, the top 30 software sales charts for the week are Nintendo only. They're all Switch games. There's not a single PlayStation game in the top 30. This hasn't happened since the NES days. So you're talking 30 plus years ago. I'm not sure the exact year. And I mean, that is one of those kind of crazy stats where you're like, oops, there's that ableist language. But it's kind of a crazy stat where you're like, damn, I mean, it sounds really bizarre because you're like, you can't get a single PlayStation game out there. Now, I don't think it's quite as doom and gloom as some people are acting because the PS5 is still selling, really well. Not just in Japan, but it's elsewhere. I mean, it's not that the Switch is outselling it, for now, but the PS5 just launched not that long ago. It's still having uh, basically issues in terms of getting it enough units out. It's still selling really well. So I mean, I don't. But this is possibly one of those like signs that Sony does. Kind of need to be careful because, like I said, this hasn't happened in over 30 years. So you're like, I mean, how do you not sit there and be? I'm not saying alarmed, but you got to be a little like a little surprised, a little taken back, and you got to be thinking we got to do something to fix this. We got to be putting games out and stuff. And some of it is because Japan prefers like the Switch or handheld gaming and stuff like that because of the way their country is. They like gaming while they're commuting to work or whatever. You know, and of course there's so many people there that they talk about having a lot of space and all that kind of thing. But some of it is like it's just the way Sony's doing things. They've been censoring games and so on and such forth. They haven't been putting games out as much. Like that appeal to a more Japanese audience. Then you can sit there and say, well, maybe they're more interested in the North American or European markets where they do very well, of course. But it's like, well, you don't want to neglect Japan though. But anyway, the fourth article I want to talk about is, if you haven't heard, I'm sure you probably have, but Tim Drake, Robin, is now a bisexual. This is from the Federalist.com. Making Batman's Robin bisexual is a weak attempt at relevance as U.S. comics fade. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything that this guy writes, Peter Pischke, because he's talking about uh, trying to he transforms into a bisexual, or he starts talking about later down here. Even though that the idea Robin was LGBTQ is bonkers, and he's up there with the top players of the DC universe, which this is all true. But it's like at the same time, the way I look at it is, okay, well, Tim Drake, it's clearly an attempt at trying to like goose some sales. They're trying to get a little publicity. They're trying to get some articles written about him because comics sales are down. They're way down because they keep pushing, as he mentions later in the article, that some of it is because they just keep pushing like their woke agendas. But then some of it is also that the art is getting worse and the writing is very bad. The art is even worse. It's because they don't care about characters. They care about like when you look at the top three things about a character, or like maybe the first three things or whatever. When you create a new character, you generally try to think of things like, okay, well, what's their name, what's their personality, what's their motivation, things of that nature, or perhaps where they come from, who's their family, all that. There's various things to do when you try to create a well-rounded character. Well, a lot of what these SJW and woke people do is they care about what's their gender, what's their race, what's their sexuality, and it's like most people don't give a shit about that. You know, Anyway, this is where he starts talking about their the industry is now being finished off by a necrotic social justice infection and a business model obsessed with turning dirt cheap comics into films. I think one of the other big problems with comic sales and why they're down is just more that there's very little action in a lot of these comics. So not only do you have bad art, bad writing, but there's no action. Like X of Swords, they sit there and that was like what 16, 17 issues, and there was a couple fights in the entire freaking thing. They would go entire issues where it was just people talking, and it's like, first off, that's not going to be interesting to the vast majority of people. Number two, if you were going to do something like that, it has to be an interesting, well-written story. As I've said, the SJW woke writers they have now are not capable of such things. They are not capable of writing interesting characters, intriguing situations, and things like that. They're hopelessly lost. Oh, whoops. Well, hopelessly blind with a tsunami of Japanese name. Anyway, but they're hopelessly lost in this idea that your gender, your race, your sexuality defines who you are as a person, which could be further from the truth. Most people don't give a damn what gender you are, what, religion you are, what sexuality you are, what race you are, etc. They care about who you are as a person. Are you a good person or not? But anyway, then he goes on and he talks some more about it. And like I said, there's some really valid points in here. But there's also, you know, I think he's focusing too much on, well, hey, Tim Drake isn't bisexual. But it's like most people go, who gives a shit? Who cares if he's bisexual? Why are you telling me this? Why are you making this such a big deal? Like, I think they're sitting there saying, take that, bigot. When most people are like, who cares? Anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Like I said, this is it's stupid. It's a waste of time. It's tokenization, basically. They're just making Tim Drake into another token, like they always do. And they're going to wonder, well, why doesn't nobody care? Well, because nobody cares about tokens. They want to read about characters. Anyway, I'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.